what the most debilitating mental health condition that I had was. Well, like I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, so people think, wow, that's really disruptive. And when they hear like bipolar disorder, they think, wow, that's really disruptive. And then when I say OCD, they go, oh, but that's not so bad. And even I was doing it too. I was sort of minimizing my OCD symptoms and sort of saying to myself, like, why can't I just snap out of this? I didn't choose to work in behavioral health. I feel like behavioral health chose me. So I started a mental health company about 7 years ago. We send daily text messages that decrease depression, anxiety, and stress for youth and adults all over the world. And the idea is that you're interrupting automatic negative thought with some type of catalyst for positive thought. And consistently but unpredictably interrupting those thought patterns can change your neural pathways. So I was like, whoa, I want to make a machine that delivers messages written by real people that can change people's brains. The kid who you couldn't pay to talk about what he was going through now does it all the time and enjoys it.
Have you ever felt so overwhelmed by your mental health concerns that it's hard to even contemplate getting help? Let's be honest. When you're really struggling, finding help and getting yourself to a therapy session can be really difficult. But that's where virtual therapy offerings like ours really make a difference. As a licensed clinical psychologist with 25 years of OCD treatment, I've worked with people to help them get their life back on track. I've also trained a clinical team to do the same here at NOCD. NOCD is an online platform offering specialized, accessible, and convenient OCD treatment. Our therapists take insurance and will work with you every step of the way to help you get your life back from obsessive-compulsive disorder. So head to nocd.com to book a call to start your treatment journey. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on our latest podcasts and webinars. Now, on to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Get to Know OCD podcast. My name is Dr. Patrick McGrath, and I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for NOCD. Today, we have Johnny Crowder with us. Johnny, from Cope Notes, how are you? Thank you for joining. I know that you met Stephen, our CEO, and had a great chat with him, and it was an exciting kind of to hear about that for me, and just said, you know what, let's get him on the podcast. Let's have a chat and let's talk, because you are someone who, as I know you're going to talk about today, I'm not giving anything away, lives with OCD. And we wanted to just kind of talk about how that has been a part of your life and what you have done in the mental health field as a way to try to make sure that you can give your contribution and people don't have to suffer with this. So, Johnny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you a ton for having me.
Tell everyone a little bit about your story, your history, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I call this the 30 years in 30 seconds question, because it's tough to sum up everything. But
let's go for 12 seconds. No, never mind. 30 seconds is fine. Yes, that's totally.
I always tell people, like, that famous Tupac quote, like, I didn't choose the thug life chose me.
There you go.
I didn't choose to work in behavioral health. I feel like behavioral health chose me. So
okay.
I grew up in an abusive environment, had drugs and alcohol near me, developed terrible coping mechanisms that mainly centered around anger and losing my temper, and was not willing to come to terms with any of my mental or emotional health challenges. And then around high school-ish, I ran away from home. And I don't know if anyone remembers what life was like before smartphones or GPSs, but I literally didn't know where I was going. I didn't have any money because I was a teenager. I couldn't get around, so I had to go home because I had no food or money and I didn't know where to stay. And when I came home, my mom was basically like, either I can drive you to the hospital or the police can drive you to the hospital. So really, you're just picking if you want to sit in the front seat on the way or the back seat on the way. But one way or another, you're going to see a doctor. And I started treatment in high school, started taking psychology courses, then went to UCF to earn a psychology degree and became really fascinated in how and why the brain changes, and earned my CRPS. So I'm a certified recovery peer specialist. And I started a mental health company about 7 years ago. So when I was 18 or so, I started speaking at conferences and events about mental health education, just helping people understand what it's actually like to live with it. And then 7 years ago, I started a company that we send daily text messages that decrease depression, anxiety, and stress for youth and adults all over the world. So that's called Cope Notes. So it's funny to think like the kid who you couldn't pay to talk about what he was going through now does it all the time and
Yeah.
enjoys it.
And finally has access to a smartphone as well.
Yeah,
Right?
thank God. I use
Yeah,
Waze.
right.
I use Waze like to get to
Yeah.
the gym. I know how to get to the gym, and I still use Waze. It's like a
Still,
comfort thing.
yeah. That's great. And, I love adversity to riches kinds of story, right? Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be monetary riches. It could be, just emotional riches. The fact that you're getting out there and you're doing things in the world in a way that you can give back to folks. This being the Get to Know OCD podcast, I'm going to assume OCD was one of those things that you were getting some treatment on.
Yeah, it's funny. If you were to ask me what the most debilitating mental health condition that I had was, I think a lot of people, like I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, so people think, wow, that's really disruptive. And when they hear like bipolar disorder, they think, wow, that's really disruptive. And those things were really challenging. But when I use words like that, like bipolar or schizophrenia, they have this image in their mind of something being really severe and really challenging. And then when I say OCD, they go, oh, but that's not so bad. Oh, compared to those other ones, that's probably not so bad. And it just shows like how I think culturally, and even I was doing it too, I was sort of minimizing um, my OCD symptoms and sort of saying to myself, like, why can't I just snap out of this? In a way that I didn't feel that way about my bipolar, about schizophrenia, or even about depression and anxiety. I took those more seriously than I took OCD. And being in treatment, actually, I would say one of the most difficult diagnoses that took a lot of time and energy, like intention, to overcome and still continues to take time and energy is OCD. And it's funny how we sort of, our culture, we downplay OCD. And then when I met you guys at that conference and hearing that you guys were taking it seriously and shining a light on it, I was like, that's so awesome, because for most of my recovery, I feel like even my own friends and family were just like, oh, he just washes his hands too much or something. It was like a joke almost. Whereas my schizophrenia and bipolar, they weren't jokes.
Sure. You've probably heard this. Let's run a few things past you and get your comments on it. Oh, I have a little OCD too.
Oh yeah. I hear a lot of that. I heard someone say, I watched this video about personality disorders recently, and they were talking about how easy it is for us to label a behavior with a diagnosis. So, for example, if someone does something narcissistic, like an action that seems narcissistic, or they have a tendency, like a character trait that is narcissistic, that does not mean that they are living with narcissistic personality disorder. And they went through all of the other personality disorders too and explained how it applies to those. And I think OCD is probably one of the most misattributed, where I will see somebody say, yesterday, I was literally at church yesterday, and someone said, oh, I'm so OCD, I don't let people wear shoes in my house. And I was like, oh, I also don't like people wearing shoes in my house. And I've never really thought of that as an OCD tendency. It seems like common sense, but that's what made it so difficult for me to accept my diagnosis. Was a lot of my, for example, I would think, Patrick, I'd go, well, I'm not going to sit near a window, but that's just common sense. I'm not going to step on a crack, but that's just common sense. I haven't touched a person in 6 years, but that's just common sense. I don't touch my food or don't touch doorknobs, but that's just common sense. So I think the damage that phrase does, I like the heart behind it, which is I'm relating to you. Right. I appreciate that and I need that. I think it sort of makes it more difficult for me to identify which behaviors in me, especially early on in my treatment, were actually dysfunctional and which ones were just trending towards cleanliness or order.
How about this other one? Wouldn't it be great if we all just had a little OCD right now?
Yeah, I hear people say, oh, I wish my roommate had OCD.
There
I
you go.
My husband had OCD. And I'm like, oh, I understand. I deeply empathize with the challenges that come with living with someone who maybe doesn't have the same sense of order or value of cleanliness that you do. But I just think, man, let me tell you something. I had OCD And I don't think my girlfriend wished I had OCD. I think I made her life really challenging in ways that I wish I didn't. And she had an ability at the time, my girlfriend, maybe 10 years ago, earlier in treatment, she had a capacity for empathy and patience that I think few people do. So if you say, I wish my husband had OCD, I'm like, do you have the patience?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for in these
Yes.
situations, right? I'm going to go with what you said too, because, and forgive the example here, everyone. I mean, no disrespect in anywhere, but I don't know of another condition where we do wish we had something like I've used this example in talks where I say, imagine going into a room full of people who are struggling with weight and saying, have you all considered an eating disorder? Just a little bit of an eating disorder. And everyone hears that and goes, oh, that's so terrible. It's so awful. And I say, yeah, and that's how people with OCD feel when they hear, wouldn't it be great if we just had a little OCD? Or when everybody says, oh yeah, I've got a little OCD too.
And I never want to downplay. I really see there being like hidden superpowers in anything. Like I think that there are character traits that I have that had their root in OCD that I think have been a net positive in my life, but have only been a net positive after years of treatment to make sure that I'm not over indulging in those things. So for example, Patrick, I used to work out for 3 hours a day every day.
Yeah.
That is an example of a healthy behavior that I made unhealthy through obsession and compulsion. Like really, I think you can do that with almost anything. And when someone hears, oh, I wish I had OCD, I wish I could work out 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm like, no, you don't. It's like really not good for your body, you know? So even things that are positive now in my life, like I'm dedicated to exercise. I'm dedicated to like maintaining a clean space. I still make efforts to make those things unperfect, to challenge my OCD today, to make sure that like I don't make my bed. And I do that on purpose to have like some part of my apartment not be perfect and to have me sit with that and accept it.
Yeah. Where I think the best thing is for people who have OCD, who have come through it, is what they have learned is they have the will and the tenacity to beat this beast that just tries to put them down and step on their face. And the fact that you can stand back up and say, OCD, I hear what you're saying, and I see the images you throw at me, and I feel the urges that you give me, and I choose to pay no attention to them. And that takes strength and courage to be able to do.
And what a lot of people don't recognize about that is it's actually very similar to my recovery on the schizophrenia side too. I would experience a hallucination, and a lot of my treatment was around accurately identifying hallucinations, like accurately identifying distortions. And I think with OCD, it was important for me to recognize, let's break down the rationale behind not sitting near a window. Like let's break into all the pros and cons. What is feasible realistically? What is statistically possible and probable? What happens if I sit near a window? And the same is true for schizophrenia. You use context clues. Like if I was hallucinating a wolf, let's say years ago, I would have to look around and say, is anyone else responding to this stimulus? Like, let's say I'm on the 4th floor of an office building at my job. Like, how did a wolf get here? Like, I live in Tampa, Florida. Are there wolves here? Did the wolf take the elevator? Did someone let the wolf in? If there was a wolf here, wouldn't other people be screaming or reacting to the wolf? So you sort of have to do that.
Very good point. Yeah.
You have to do that same thing with OCD, where you look at a behavior and you think like, is this a distortion, or am I just so used to it that I've normalized it, but it's actually unhealthy, masquerading as quote unquote normal?
I always like to ask people, would you recommend to the people you love to do what you're about to do? And inevitably it's, well, no. Well, okay. Well, why do you need to do it if you wouldn't want anyone else to do it?
Oh, that's so convicting, Patrick. What the heck? That's such a great.
Thank you. Well, and so Johnny, tell me what you think of this. I call that specialness, the idea that the rules of the world apply to me differently than they do to everybody else. And maybe this has been a part of your life, but tell me what you think. We are great at motivating other people. And I think this is where Cope Notes comes in, right? And so I want to link that to this. But we are just shit at motivating ourselves, right? So, imagine if you have a kid doing a piano recital, and you would likely go up to them and say, "We're so proud of you. We can't wait to hear you play tonight. Have a great recital. We're going to go out for ice cream afterwards." You would not go up to them and say, "We have heard you practice, and wow, what a waste of money the lessons have been. We're pretty frankly embarrassed to be related to you. We won't be attending the recital. We'll be in the car outside afterwards. If you could just sneak out the side door, we're going to drive off really quick before anybody knows that we're related to you." You would never say that to your children. But Johnny, I bet in your own life, how many times did you talk to yourself the second way? And just think of every bad thing that might go on and how it's going to be your fault and your responsibility. And anytime anybody gave you a positive, it was just kind of, you're just saying that. You're supposed to say that. It doesn't really count. It's not really true.
Yeah, this is really common in music. So
Sure.
a big part of my professional background is I've been a touring musician for almost my entire life. So I started playing guitar when I was 8 years old. I played my first concert when I was 16. I signed a record label and started touring still as a teenager. And I finished my degree on tour, like
Nice.
signed and touring full time. And I still, like, I was in the studio last week. I'll be in the studio next week. So I'm still active in music. And what I see to be very common among musicians and creatives, performers in general, many of which struggle with OCD. Like, the overlap between OCD and creativity is mind blowing. So you're seeing these people who are very proficient performers, and you say, "Excellent set," and they go, "Yeah, well, the sound guy messed this up," or "I broke a string on the fourth song." And
Yeah.
there's always a way for them to sort of downplay this. And I heard somebody describe humility to me, and it was, humility is not lowering yourself, it's lifting others.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that, because I realized that what that person was communicating in that conversation was, we need to learn to say thank you when someone compliments us, and then we
Yes.
also need to learn to recognize when we do hard stuff.
Yes.
And, like, literally, I'm not joking, to this day, yesterday at church, I shook somebody's hand, which I didn't do for many, 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 many years. Almost my whole life, I wouldn't shake a hand. And I shook somebody's hand yesterday, and I said to myself, "Good job, buddy." Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Good.
And just being able to celebrate and not go, "Well, you just shook it one time," or, "Well, you went to treatment, so you should be doing this." It's like, no, celebrate that. Not only say thank you when other people do it, but also we need to be advocates for ourselves and celebrate that progress.
That is my exercise for the people I work with. So I say, today, every time you do something well, treat yourself like you're your very best friend in the world.
Yes.
So do what you said. Say, "Good job." Even if you don't believe it, just say it, right? And then I give an assignment, say, tomorrow, treat everybody you know like you normally treat yourself. And at the end of the day, see if anyone will ever speak to you again for the rest of your life.
That's so good. I hope nobody takes you up on that.
Well, nobody does. I said, don't actually do it, but hopefully you
Yeah.
get the point. I mean, and that's goes back to motivation again, right? We are wonderfully great at motivating other people, and we're not really good at motivating ourselves. And so if we could get people to start believing the advice they give everyone else, that it would apply to themselves, I think our world would be a much better place.
And think about how we celebrate other people for very small things. Like,
Of course.
Your spouse negotiates a deal with her boss to have next Friday off or something, so she can go do something. You're like, yes, you stood up for yourself, you held your ground, you advocated for what you wanted, you got what you deserved, and now you have that Friday to yourself to do whatever you want. I am so proud of you. And then when we experience a big breakthrough, whether it's in treatment or like in our regular life, we don't even, and by we, I mean myself included, we'll move the goalposts so often. I remember this was the first time I ever stepped foot into treatment for OCD. We walked past this bathroom that had an open doors, like a public bathroom. And the doctor said to me, "By the time I'm finished with you, you're going to be dunking biscuits in that toilet." And I freaked out. I wanted to run out, and she's cracking up, and I'm not laughing at all, because I'm like, if this is what like exposure therapy is going to be, is like me eating out of a toilet, like I'm going to explode. And I think she did that to sort of jokingly scare me and set that goalpost so wildly far out of reach to then help me contextualize the work that we would do. And
Yeah.
she was very careful about making sure that we celebrated even these small steps. Like, let's say we're working towards touching hands, like shaking hands.
Yeah.
For weeks, she would hold my iPod. I'm dating myself a little bit, but she would like hold my iPod we'd set a timer. So she'd have it in her hand for like 15 seconds. It would sit on a table for 3 minutes, and then I'd have to hold it for 15 seconds.
Oh, the
And that
germ
seems
transfer.
really, it seems really small, but for me, it was almost like the hardest thing I had ever done. And she would celebrate that and go like, now that, Johnny, we spent 4 months just talking about doing it. And look, you did it. And she helped me understand how important it is to recognize and celebrate that progress.
Yeah, because I joke a little. People with OCD are a lot of times fixing to get ready to do something, right?
I really like that.
Yeah, and I want you to do it. We're not fixing to get ready to do it anymore. Let's go do it, right? Let's do it. So you've done something. Tell us about Cope Notes and where that comes from and what you see with it and what you're proud of about it.
Yeah, it's truly a miracle that I even get to do this work. The main two things that stole my heart in my recovery. One was, I went to school and I was studying neuroscience and abnormal psychology. Those were like my two areas of focus that I was fascinated by. Abnormal psych because I'm a little bit abnormal, admittedly, and I wanted to know what was going on in my brain. And then neuroscience because I was fascinated by the idea that the brain could change. So those two things wrapped up all my focus and energy in school. And then after school, I was volunteering with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I was learning about and participating in peer support, which is basically someone with lived experience sitting down with someone who has very similar experience. That's it. And I loved the human element of peer support and the sort of practical application of like neuroplasticity and neuroscience and health education. I was like, how do we take the human touch of peer support, like the empathy, and mix it with like the health education and neuroscience stuff to make something that could literally change brains over time? And it literally started as me leaving sticky notes for myself around my house to like interrupt negative thought patterns. And eventually it became a company, but it's based on this intervention style called ecological momentary intervention, or EMI. Learned about it in school. And the idea is that you're interrupting automatic negative thought with some type of catalyst for positive thought, like a psychology fact or journaling prompt and exercise. So these are micro interventions, like 10 seconds. All you do is read a message, and consistently but unpredictably interrupting those thought patterns can change your neural pathways. So I was like, whoa, I want to make a machine that delivers messages written by real people that can change people's brains. And that's what we've been doing we just turned 7 years old. So it started just doing it for like me and my friends. And now we serve like school districts and hospital systems and governments and employers. It's like been a miracle to take it from this like sticky notes in my shoes and in frying pans in my apartment to now serving all the people that we serve today.
We do something similar from a therapy point of view. Like I've had people who don't want to think about things put little red dots in their house in various spots. And every time they see one, I want them to think about that thing so that it just habituates for them. And they just get so used to it that it doesn't spike any anxiety or discomfort or anything anymore. So it can be used in many ways. So I really appreciate that. When you obviously get feedback from people who get these Cope Notes, right? What kind of things do you hear from folks who sign up for this and are able to receive them?
I think anytime anyone who's ever started a project or a nonprofit or a company or anything, even a band, like there are moments when you want to quit. You're like, there's so much work. I can't believe how hard this is. You just get so discouraged. And the things that have kept me going in those periods of like exhaustion or burnout have always been testimonials, like messages from people. And I screenshot every single one. Like these people probably don't know this if someone messages me on Instagram or sends me an email. But I screenshot all of them.
Awesome.
And I have a folder in my phone, and it's like just for me that I look through. And of course we have public testimonials that people put on our website, but some of the messages that I've received, Like one really sticks out, and I don't think I'll ever forget this. There's this idea that like the right message at the right time could change or save somebody's life. And we've heard stories about this time and time again. We've sent 4.5 million messages. So it's been
Wow.
like all over the world. So
Mhm.
we hear a lot of stories like that, but there's this one particular story that always sticks out in my mind because the Hollywood story, and we do get some of these, is like, oh, I was thinking about going to a bar, and then your text message came up as I turned on my CarPlay, and a Cope Notes message came up about how I need to be careful with who I spend my time with and the coping mechanisms that I turn to. And then I turned my car off and I went back inside and I said no and I stayed sober. It's like
There you go.
we hear messages like that. And I think people like the right message at the right time story. And I love those. But there's this one that sticks out of my mind that's different because that's not the story. What actually happened is there was this man who had decided that he was going to end his life, and he climbed to the top of a casino. And he was going to jump off the roof of the casino, very tall building. And he climbs up on the ledge, and there are these shells. You know the type of concrete that has shells in it? And so he climbs up and he sees the shells, and he remembers a message from months prior about how we find what we're looking for in life. Something like that. It was a comparison of like, if you go to a beach and you are looking for shells, you find them. And if you go to a beach and you're not thinking about shells at all, you don't see any. You're like, wow, there were no shells at that beach. And the only difference was your focus and attention. So something about that message reminded him of a conversation he had with his mom. So he gets off the ledge, he calls his mom takes him to treatment, and he sends us this message after he gets out. And he's like, I'm sober and I'm never going to make another attempt on my life again. And it was like, this wasn't the right message at the right time. This was like, we sent seemingly maybe the wrong message at the wrong time. It wasn't relevant to him in that moment, or it didn't move the needle. And then months later, some outside stimulus triggered his memory of what we had communicated, and he made the decision. What I love about that story is we're not the hero. We didn't show up at the right time in the right moment. He decided, he dug into his memory and said, what do I know to be true? How does this apply? And I just love that, because that's our heart, is like, of course it's fun to get to be the hero, but what we really want is to empower people to make healthier decisions and think healthier thoughts. And that's a perfect example of us just being a conduit, like a supporter, but him actually making that decision to change his life.
Where do you see this go in the neuropsychological level, right? You talked about studying that, and now people are getting these notes and the positiveness of it. And how do you experience that, or how have people described that? Or is there any research that we could do on that, right? To see what does this positivity do to the brain, and how does it help to change things?
Yeah, we really are passionate about changing your default thought. So anyone who's ever heard the phrase, I'm going to get a little nerdy, but it's a lot of fun for me.
Please.
So hopefully people listening will like this too. Mm-hmm. There's this phrase that synapses that fire together, wire together, quote unquote, which is this idea that the more often you think a thought, the more likely you are to think it again, because the synapses associated with that thought migrate closer together to improve the efficiency of that thought, to save your brain calories. That's basically all your brain is trying to do, is save calories. So if you wake up in the morning, you think, oh, today's going to suck, and you think that over and over again, it's your first thought in the morning, it becomes so easy that it costs you almost no calories. It's like the most convenient thought to think. So what we try to do is make those thoughts inconvenient to think. We try to interrupt those thoughts and make other thoughts more convenient to think. So our dream is for people to say, I used to lose my temper, and that was so easy for me to lose my temper, but I had me losing my temper interrupted so many times at a random time each day. I never knew when it was going to happen or how. I had it interrupted so many times that the synapses associated with me losing my temper started growing further apart, and it became less convenient for me to lose my temper. And slowly I started defaulting to not screaming or not slamming doors. And I'm using anger as an example, but there is an idea that you can create a new default. And that's what we're most passionate about, is like, if you get rear-ended today and you get rear-ended 6 months after you've been using cope notes, do you respond in a healthier manner?
Yeah. Because I've always said it in anxiety disorders, uh, anything that happens more than once becomes a pattern. So if you do get hit today, and then even in 5 years from now you get hit again, what are you going to say? My car always gets hit. I get hit all the time,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Uh, Actually, most of the time you don't get hit, but we're really good at pulling out the negative, right?
Correct.
And just really focusing on that. So I like that you're trying to get people to focus on the difference. Of course, there's always a slight danger in that, and this is nothing with you, but as you know, with OCD, you have to be wary of not trying to always replace a negative thought with a positive thought, because that in and of itself can become compulsive too, right? So you want
Yes.
people to be able to accept a message and move on, and not be like, oh, every time I think something negative, now I have to think something positive, or else that just goes into the realm back of what OCD wants, right?
Dude, we actually had to change all of our branding because of what you just said. So originally, so right now our slogan is goodbye negative thoughts.
There we go.
For a long time it was negative thoughts suck. And it was supposed to be ironic, like
Yeah.
because that in itself is a negative thought. And a lot of people brought up the point that negative thoughts themselves are not so toxic that we
Right.
should repress all of them, because then we'll explode eventually. So the idea, we shifted to goodbye negative thoughts because we want to be able to say, I totally understand where that negative thought is coming from. I appreciate that it's trying to protect me. I'm a big fan of like internal family systems therapy, or IFS.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that you can say, I get why I have that fear. Like, it makes sense that I have that fear, and I know it's trying to protect me. I acknowledge it. I feel it. I feel that fear. And I'm going to choose not to allow that fear to dictate every decision I make. So it's the ability to wave goodbye is the image. We say like, hello, thank you for all you're doing. And then to let go, adios, I'll see you
Mm-hmm.
next time, and not carry it with you.
There we go. You know, I have a card in my wallet. I was working with somebody almost 20 years ago who had a fear that if they thought something negative about their parents would be dead by the end of the day. And so they would say a prayer to make sure their parents would be alive. And so when we got to that point in treatment where it was time to work on that, I pulled out a business card in my wallet and I wrote down on the card, I hope my parents die tonight, please God, and put a 666 on the card.
Whoa.
It is still in my wallet to this day. I said to the person, if you ever see me on the street or at a conference, just say, I'm the card guy. I'll pull the card out. I'll show it to you. Now, the card will be right twice. It has not yet been right. It will be at some point. It will be right. My parents know it's in there. So if they're watching, I know you know it's in there. Yeah.
Jeez.
But I said, listen, I'm never going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And many people might look at that thought and say, oh, that's bad. That's awful. That's horrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
I want us to all think of these things as purely neutral. They don't have to have a negative or even a positive meaning whatsoever. I just the goal for me, at least for OCD, is can you just accept anything that pops in your head? Because if I propose something to two people in a room, one has OCD and one's a screenwriter, the person with OCD might start doing compulsions, and the screenwriter might go, movie, write a script, and make
Yep.
$1 million off of it, right?
Yeah, I heard this thing recently. It was this I watch a lot of videos about this stuff just because it's fascinating to me and it affects my life. It's not only part of my professional life, but also I benefit from it greatly. I love learning about this stuff. And I watched this video recently that said, so I'm going through some grief right now. So I lost my home in a hurricane a few months
Ugh,
ago, and
sucks.
almost everything I own. So if you want to take someone with OCD who likes order
Yo,
and you just destroy their home in a hurricane, and you have to like you just have to like rebuild all these parts of your life. And at the same time, I lost a relationship. I lost this big part of my professional life. Like, I was transitioning from touring full time to now we're not touring full time. We're more recording music instead of being on the road. So tons of change all at the same time. And I had this story in my mind that I didn't feel that I was choosing, but the story that I was telling myself was, I lost everything. I lost
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
wife, I lost my home, I lost my career, I lost my purpose, I lost my sense of safety. It's like this snowballing sort of rumination that I've lost everything. And I was watching this video about grief, and this psychologist said it's important to separate yourself from the thought, which I've always understood. That's a big part of my schizophrenia treatment, was like recognizing like
Sure.
I am not schizophrenic. I am a person who is experiencing a hallucination, and that hallucination is not me. It is like a something that I'm experiencing. Just like if you go to Alaska, you experience cold. You
Correct.
are not cold, you just are experiencing cold. But this video said take it one step further. So she said, I don't say I've lost everything. And I don't say I'm having the thought I lost everything, which is really powerful. And a lot of people, you could stop there and still be miles ahead of the human race as a
Yeah.
whole. I'm having the thought that I lost everything. But she said, I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that I've lost everything. So you're not the person who lost everything. You're not the person thinking that you lost everything. You're the person who notices that you're thinking that thought. And it makes you feel, and it's actually true. It's not like it's not mental gymnastics or semantics. It's actually true. You're the person who's noticing that that thought exists. And that just gives you so much power to separate yourself from whatever that story is. And then it gives you the authority to change it. Because you're like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm having that thought. Then I can choose to assess the validity and accuracy. Did I lose everything, Patrick? Everything? I don't think so. I have my vision.
Mm-hmm.
I have my family. I have my physical health. Like FEMA said, I would have died if I was in the unit
Wow.
when the storm hit. And I'm alive. So think
Yeah.
about, it's not that I didn't lose a lot. It's having the ability to separate yourself from that thought and then assess its accuracy.
And tying that back to OCD, you're not your OCD. You're not your
Correct.
OCD subtype either, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
not this awful, horrible thing that your OCD tells you. What if you were this? Because OCD doesn't even have to say you are this. It just has to say, oh, but Johnny, what if you did?
Oh yeah, lots of what ifs.
It's the what if disorder, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You never have to have done anything. You just have to maybe what if you might have and you didn't know it, or what if you do in the future and you don't know it.
Oh man, that's where the creativity comes from, man.
Mm-hmm.
These OCD people have some ideas. I will tell you that. We are very creative thinkers.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and you probably saw this in therapy too, right? I've never given enough of a rational answer to someone with OCD, because every answer I give is always responded to with a, well, yeah, but what if this?
Oh yeah.
And OCD always has one more yeah, but what if than I have an answer to.
Yeah, there's like always you ever play Uno and like you play a draw 2 and then they play a draw 4 and you
jerk.
Just keep dealing back and forth.
And then they pick yellow and you have no yellow cards at all. It's like, damn
yes.
it. No, it's, I like too, I mean, I love your attitude, right? I mean, I could see the positivity, I think a lot of people would think, geez, the guy's got hallucinations. He's got OCD. He lost his house. He's what? Oh, why is he smiling? I mean, what the hell, man? Why aren't you just sitting in a corner crying or something like that? What do you attribute that to, that you're able to do this?
Dude, it's a few things. I want to first say I go to great lengths to make sure I am not delusional. So I'm not convincing myself that it's not bad. Like dude, it's a real challenge in my life. And I think there are a few things that come to mind. I'll just mention the first couple. One thing is I've been very intentional about allowing myself to feel the feelings. Like you said, if I get sad, I don't try to throw it away. Like I was on a plane. I speak at events and conferences and stuff pretty frequently. So I'm on planes a lot. And when you're on planes, you listen to a lot of music because you don't want to hear all the noise. So I have headphones in, I'm listening to music, and this chord progression happens in this song. It's like a piano chord progression. Just the chords made me start crying. Like I wasn't sobbing, but I just started tearing up. And I was like, wow, there's some sadness in here from everything I've lost that is really, it's still in there. And it can, like, the chord progression poked on a part of my heart that was sore. And so my initial reaction was, don't cry, you're on a plane. Mm-hmm. And this happened months ago. Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And then I was like, hold on, there's something here. So I got up, I went to the bathroom, grabbed tissues, came back to my seat, started the song over to purposely re-experience that and just create 5 minutes of space to, like, it's like feeling that something was uncomfortable and then taking, no, I don't want to run away from this. I want to just carve out 5 minutes to intentionally experience this and be all in for it. And I listened to the song and I cried. And it felt like if I didn't give myself those permissions to just feel grief, I feel like it would be like a negative thought suck, and I'm gonna fight my way through this. I'm balancing allowing myself to experience that sadness fully instead of qualifying it and going, well, it's not so bad. And no, just if you're going to be sad, carve out some time and be sad for it. And then balancing that with understanding that emotions, and I would include sadness as an emotion, or anxiety or discomfort,
Sure. Yeah.
Any of these things, all of which are associated with OCD, by the way.
Shame, guilt.
All of these things are temporary. And how I know that is on this 3.5 hour plane ride. If somebody watched me, like the person behind me, if they were like documenting me, like people study apes, like if someone was watching me for 3.5 hours to watch my behavior, they would think I was insane, because in 3.5 hour period, I was totally fine. I cry randomly, and they don't even know what the stimulus is, because if you're looking at me from the outside, I'm just sitting in a chair. So they don't hear what I hear. They don't know what's going on or what I lost. And then later on that same trip, I was reading a satire book and laughing. And I think somebody was like, wow, this guy is just all over the place. And I think I find solace in, not only do I create space to feel that sadness or frustration or whatever, but I also balance that with knowing that discomfort or pain is temporary and will soon be replaced by another emotion, whether that is today or next week or next month or next year. And then looking back at my life and seeing evidence, like proof positive, that I can overcome difficult things, and that pain or sadness or grief, they don't remain as debilitating as they are at first forever.
Yeah. And isn't that one of the biggest lies of OCD? You, yes. Johnny, will yes. not be able to handle this, so you better do a compulsion, because that's the only way to get out of it.
Yes, it's this idea. And let me tell you something. OCD for me was it was control related in many ways, because I felt, I grew up in an abusive home. So you feel like you're totally out of control. Yeah. And so you want to reclaim control in whatever way you can. And there's this distortion of your locus of control that's actually not helpful. Because someone like my pastor told me, like, you don't get to control if a hurricane blows your house down. Like, that wasn't in your camp. You don't get to control if you get dumped. You don't get to control if you get fired. You don't get to control if you're diagnosed with leukemia or something. Like, none of these things are within our control. But who you become in the wake of that stimulus matters so much. And there's this idea, at least with my OCD, that was the opposite. It told me control the stimulus.
Yeah.
Because you'll never actually be strong or capable or resilient enough to endure stimulus that doesn't line up with what you like. So instead, change the stimulus. And I think a big part of my healing has been recognizing what parts of stimulus are not reasonable for me to expect to control, and instead working to become the type of person that can not be laid out by circumstance not being the way that I want.
I give an example to people when they start treatment with me. I say there's 3 people in front of an elevator, and the elevator door opens. The kid runs in and presses all the buttons and is totally excited. Next person walks in and hits their floor, scornfully looks at the child, because now they have to stop at all these floors that he hit, but just whatever. And then another person panics and takes the stairs. Is the elevator frightening or exciting or neither? And the elevator is neutral and subject to the perception or interpretation of anybody experiencing it. If I tried to do what you just said, bringing it back into that, and control the stimuli, To
Yeah.
help the person who's afraid of it, I have to nail the elevator to the wall so that it wouldn't move anymore. But now the person who needs the elevator to get to their floor is going to be really pissed off. So now I've changed their reaction to the stimuli by changing the stimuli. So I love what you say there, because what we try to teach in OCD all the time is that the only thing that we can learn how to somewhat manage, not even be in control, because control is an illusion as far as I'm concerned, is how we react to something.
Yeah.
And why do we do exposure and response prevention therapy? Why did you do it? Because you learned that you could react differently to stimuli that you never thought you could react differently to.
Man, I'm telling you, I dated someone once who had borderline personality disorder, and they, as part of their treatment, they were doing like distress tolerance, like basically increasing their ability to endure things that are uncomfortable or not the way that they want. And the whole time I was learning about that while she was going through it, I was like, oh, that's what I needed for OCD, is like the idea of something like someone touching me. Like in school, kids knew that they could get under my skin because they knew I didn't want to be touched. So if they wanted to bug me, they would like lick their hand and touch me.
They couldn't get under your skin. They couldn't even touch your skin. What are you talking about, Johnny?
it was absolutely like it made me feel like I was going to explode.
Sure.
And learning to regulate my response to that, I just thought I just need to keep people from doing that to me.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm like, buddy, that's not the point. Like, hopefully people don't keep doing that to you, but really you'll never be able to control keeping other people from doing that to you. You will be able to control how much of that you can tolerate without completely flipping your lid.
Yeah. That's awesome. This has been a great chat. I really enjoyed this. And since you're a guitar player, so is my Alex Lyson Babblehead has also really enjoyed it as well too. Yes. Rush.
Double neck.
The double neck, the double. Yes, there we go.
Legit.
So. But I really thank you, Johnny. Where can people find info on you, the band, the Cope Notes? Give us all your stuff.
Yeah. So we didn't get to talk about music a ton, but it's been a really healthy outlet for me with all of the mental and emotional health challenges I've been through. My current band is called Prison. We're on Spotify, Apple Music. We have music videos on YouTube, pretty easy to find. My last band was called Dark Sermon. So my current band is more like new metal, alternative metal. My last band was like blackened death metal, like real fast stuff. And that's on Spotify and YouTube and all that stuff. And then if you want to learn about Cope Notes and sign up for free, just to try it, we do have paid subscriptions, but if you just want to try it, no strings attached, totally anonymous, you can go to copenotes.com. You can get a subscription for yourself or a friend or family member, or we can serve your organization wherever you are. And then, my website is johnnycrowder.com. So if you want to like book me as a speaker, and then for social media, I'm only on 3. So I'm on Facebook. You can find me pretty easily. I'm on LinkedIn for business stuff. And then on Instagram, I'm at Johnny Crowder Loves You, because I do.
Awesome. Well, Johnny, this has been a fun, fantastic conversation. I thank you so very much for the time.
Heck yes. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And thank all of you for joining us once again on the Get to Know OCD podcast. If you like the podcast, subscribe on the NOCD YouTube channel. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. Our care team is waiting to chat with you and get you hooked up with a therapist who's specially trained in working with people who have OCD and provide evidence-based treatments. Until next time, take care of each other. See ya.